Hello, this is Sean Teacher, and I'd like to welcome you to a presentation about the artist Piet Mondrian. Now, Piet Mondrian was Dutch, meaning that he came from the country of the Netherlands. So when someone comes from the Netherlands, they are Dutch. He was born in 1872, and he died in 1944. And he was a very famous artist during his time. He started out pretty much like many other artists do, painting portraits, landscapes, and still lifes. But he always sort of found a need to do something different, something new. Here you can see a portrait of a little girl. It's quite beautiful, but at the same time, it wasn't exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to create something that hadn't been seen before. And of course, this is a difficult thing to do because most people don't realize that pretty much everything to be thought of as new art has already been done. So the famous saying is, there is nothing new under the sun. We can see that he paints landscapes very nicely, and that's not a bad thing, but he wanted something more, something new, something different to make himself distinguished from other artists of his time. And if you look at this, in fact, I really wish you would look very closely at it, because when you see his later work, it's very different. So take a good look at this, and you'll see what I mean. So this is called Trees 2. So there must be a Trees 1 somewhere. But during the time that he made this, there was an art movement called Cubism that was very new and exciting, mostly being done by Pablo Picasso. And Piet Mondrian wanted to be part of this, but at the same time he wanted to be different as well. So Cubism was a way of making things from squares and triangles and circles or geometric shapes. So you can see he's trying to make something out of geometric shapes here, and he's calling it trees. Does it look like trees to you? Well, he's gone away from trees and just to geometric shapes. The title of this is just called Number 11. So this must be the 11th painting of some type. But he's not really identifying anything that we know in real life. It's just sort of these geometric shapes and sort of pastel colors. This his version of Cubism. But he keeps working on his version of Cubism. This isn't very different from the last one we saw, but the colors are getting a little more exciting, I think. Uh, Now we're getting to it. Remember a few minutes ago when I told you to remember what his artwork looked like from before? It's very different now, isn't it? Just sort of squares and rectangles. It's a strange little world that he's created here, but this is the sort of art that will eventually shape what he was most well known for. And I'm going to show you that in a moment. So, here's another one. Just squares. But what's important here is that you notice that most of the squares are blue, yellow, and red. Where have you heard those three colors before? Blue, yellow, and red. What's he thinking about? Now, of course, there's white and black, and there's some grays there, but he's thinking about something here. Blue, yellow, and red. What's he thinking about? Okay, this is what Piet Mondrian eventually became very well known for. Most people, when they talk about Piet Mondrian, this is what they talk about. And you'll notice that other than black and white, and maybe some gray colors, but blue, red, and yellow. And if you haven't figured it out, those are the primary colors, or the first colors that all people have. So these colors make all other colors. For instance, if you mix blue with yellow, you get green. Or if you mix yellow with red, you get orange. And Piet Mondrian thought that these three colors were quite powerful all by themselves, as you will see. Does that remind you of the last thing that he did? It's very interesting, isn't it? And pretty much for the rest of his life, this is what Piet Mondrian did. He just painted sort of white squares and rectangles, black squares and rectangles, with black borders and red, blue, and yellow colors in some of them. Sometimes the spaces are quite big and empty, with just a little hint of color. And this makes for an interesting composition that he does over and over and over for years at a time, always finding some different thing to do. Some people are reminded of street maps, buildings and streets. And I think he sort of laughed about that when people said that to him. What do you think? Do you think that Piet Mondrian's works are too simple? That they're too easy? Do you think they look like street maps? What's your opinion?